everyone. I am Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker and the host of this Halt and Catch Fire rewatch podcast. Of course, when I speak, my topic is something I call Take the Doughnut, which is another way to say carpe diem, go after the things that you want in life. And what I wanted to do this year was rewatch the show, Halt and Catch Fire, but talk about it with other people this time. And this has been fun because we're getting even some new commenters today to share feedback from, and lots of people are joining the party. This has been so much fun. Today, we're going to talk about the episode. It's season 2, episode 6, and it was called 10Broad36. Before I get into it, I just wanted to point out, in case you missed it, the most recent interview that I just dropped was with Annabeth Gish, the Diane Gould, who we have not yet gotten to in this rewatch, but she's going to be a season 3 and season 4 character. And I can't wait to get to her. She's my favorite character in all of TV. I'm not kidding. All of TV. And I'm somebody who also did a Felicity rewatch podcast. So it's saying a lot that there's a character that I love more than that. And she said some really cool things about the show. So if you're brand new to the show, maybe wait on that for a little bit until we get to those episodes. But if you've seen it before, definitely go back and watch, because there's going to be some really fun ideas that she brings up for when we get into those episodes. Having said all that, that's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about today is 10Broad36, season 2, episode 6. And that one originally aired July 5th of 2015. It was directed by Larissa Kondracki and written by Jamie Pacino, possibly Jamie Pacino. Jamie, if you hear this, if anybody knows, feel free to correct me and say which one is right. Here's the description. After Joe forces their hand, Mutiny must find a way to port their programs over to a Unix PC in order to keep their network active. Gordon visits his brother Henry, revealing his condition to him, and Donna is faced with a difficult decision. Well, that's a way to summarize this in a couple sentences, isn't it? My goodness. First of all, let's talk about the title 10Broad36. I am no tech expert, as you're about to find, but I saw the title of this episode and I thought, surely that is a reference to something that I don't understand. Let me look it up. And then I looked it up, and the answer illuminated it 0% more for me. I am more confused by the title of this episode after I've looked it up. But I'm going to initiate a little segment here I'm going to call Melissa Tries to Figure Out the Episode Title. I've got 2 different takes on this. The first one is a very simple one. 10Broad36 is an obsolete computer network standard in the Ethernet family. It was developed during the 1980s and specified in IEEE 802.3b 1985. Anybody who knows technical stuff just like rolled their eyes and tuned out when I read that, because I'm sure I said it wrong. But here's the really funny part. So I went and looked up a site called Academic Kids for an explanation, because I thought for sure Academic Kids would explain this to me in a way I could understand. It did not. So here's just for the sheer humor of it, to see my reaction. Here's what Academic Kids has to say about this subject. 10Broad36 is an obsolete standard for carrying 10 Mbits Ethernet signals over standard 75 OHM CATV cable over a 3,600 meter range. Unlike most Ethernet standards, which use a baseband type encoding, where the signal is simply encoded directly on the wire without any sort of carrier wave, 10Broad36 modulated its data into a RF baseband, much as an audio signal would be encoded onto a carrier wave to be transmitted in a radio station. This provides several advantages over the more traditional baseband signal. Range is greatly extended, and multiple signals can be carried on the same line. That seems relevant. 10Broad36 could even share a wire with standard CATV signals. Okay. You don't need me to read the rest of this. Look, I looked to the screen anytime I heard something I understood, but I only understood those little words. Okay. Gosh, Academic Kids. Whew. Wow. Amazing. Okay. Who I just don't even know what to say about it. Anyway, so 10Broad36, we get some amount of context for the concept of it in this episode. And I think my attempt painfully to read what that means, the description of that technology, goes to show you how tricky it probably was and how important it was for this show to speak both to people who have a tech knowledge and those who do not, and somehow make this show interesting and accessible for all of those people is no easy feat. So, let's get into the scene by scene breakdown for this and see what happens to us, shall we? All right, so we're going to start. There's a song playing. It's called Lucky I Got What I Want. Now, sometimes when you start with a song, you might think you're heading into a montage, and that's not really what's happening here. We're going to start with Joe. We're sitting behind him, sitting down at the kitchen table. We're kind of below him a little bit. Camera's angled up. It's starting on his lower back, and it's going to work its way up. Joe's seated at the kitchen table in the morning, and the camera's panning up. We're going to finally get to see over his shoulder to a box of grape nuts, which he's eating. I haven't thought about grape nuts in probably 30 years. Okay. It's been a minute, but I definitely associate that cereal with the 80s. Maybe it's still a product that's made today. I don't know, but I associate it with the 80s. He is reading something. We're going to then get a couple different shots from around the apartment. So we're going to get a shot looking towards him from, let's say, in front and diagonally from across the room. Within the table, there's in the foreground, there's a table, coffee table. It looks like a low table. I think he says it's a countertop later. There's a beer bottle on it, an empty beer bottle. Beer bottle's in focus. Joe in the background is out of focus. Song is still playing. Then we're going to switch the viewpoint of him again. We're going to see him from another room, but this time he's it kind of reminds me of the Comdex episode where we see the brothers giving their spiel, but we're seeing them from through a doorway down a hallway. So we're just seeing a little bit of them. That's kind of how we see Joe in this scene, in this moment, where we see him from another room, but he's sort of between two walls. So he's like only in this little bit of the frame, and there's all this other space in the camera angle around him. So what's in the foreground in that scene, it kind of looked like a fax machine, like the long view of it looked like a fax machine, but it might have just been a phone. And Joe's going to look over at it, and then we're going to hear him leave a message. He leaves a message for Sarah. He says, "It's me again. Are you there?" And now we're going to switch our view of him again. He is now in a bedroom. He's standing in front of a closet, but actually what we see initially is he's standing in front of a mirror. So as he's leaving this message, we see two Joes. We actually get a better view of his reflection than we do of himself. And I think there's something to that in this scene. He says, "Sarah, it's me again. Are you there? I come home. I can tell you've been here." He opens the closet door. He's looking inside at her stuff. And this is an interesting part. He's going to sit down on the bed. Now the closet door is partially open. We see his reflection, the full view of him and his reflection, but we can only see the back of him from in the actual Joe in the room. And I don't know, it feels like there's something symbolic in that. It says, I come home, I can tell you've been here. Sometimes it's an empty bottle on the counter, or some of your clothes go missing. I feel like you want me to see these things. I do notice, I do. I call you, but you don't pick up. It's been a week. I love you. Call me. He hangs his head and he sighs. Okay, so it's been a week and she's been giving herself that space, and she's just been slowly taking stuff out of the apartment. The phone's going to ring now. And he says, "Sarah?" He thinks it might be Sarah, but it's not. It's Jacob. Jacob says business development has made a few tweaks to the mutiny contract. I wanted to send it over this afternoon. Ooh, sneaky. They're kind of big tweaks. Joe says, what kind of tweaks? And now we're going to cut from here to a walk and talk with Joe and Jacob. I assume Jacob told him what the tweaks were on the phone, and Joe hightailed it over to the office to West Group to talk it out. So we're going to see this power walk and talk with Joe and Jacob. And Joe says, jumping Mutiny's hourly rate from $3 to $5 would hamstring their growth. What if they have a bad month? I mean, that's significant, right? I mean, that's practically doubled their hourly rate that he initially went to them with. Well, he didn't go to them with it. He did it. Gordon made it happen. That's the story. So Jacob says, hey, well, that's not our problem. The going market rate is $5, and we have to set a precedent for other clients. Joe's like, look, it's all found money to West Group. You wouldn't have had any of this. What difference does it make if we offer a temporary exemption? Jacob says, why are you so anxious to give this company a break? I hope it's not your past relationship with the founder. Joe's like, no. It's probably his past relationship with the founder. I think Jacob has assessed this correctly. Joe says, no. Mutiny is our pilot program. We both took a risk and they got an appropriate discount as a result. Jacob just smiles and just walks away from him. Jacob's like, I like Cameron, but I like the deal you pitched me more. A bunch of companies give us free money to use our network when we aren't. You're my building manager. I only want the tenants who can pay the highest rent. That is his directive. Look, what was Joe's angle in all of this? What was Joe's final design in all of this? I think that's completely debatable pretty much all the way through the show, really. I think that he didn't want, this is a much more expedited timeline than he ever wanted, because Donna really put the screws to Gordon and said, we need this thing in writing. It set all of these wheels in motion probably a lot faster than he wanted. He didn't have the data to bring to Jacob to prove why this was valuable. He didn't have enough time to give this service to Cameron and Donna for him to really have it be an olive branch. So in this scene, in this episode, it's going to come off like a bait and switch, because they didn't really ever get the experience of having the lower rate, at least not for very long, right? That was probably not Joe's intent. I think he wanted something out of this, but this kind of makes everybody feel suspicious of him. So Joe, he's going to give one more last ditch effort. He's going to do that sort of the turn, the little nose brush, the thing you'll see guys do in movies and TV when they want to get tough. He's going to turn back again. He's going to say, Jacob, I respectfully disagree. With Mutiny, I see our role as more hands-on. Oh. The way in, huh? This is a company with potential to innovate. There's talent, but it's raw. It needs shaping, guidance. That's where we come in, Reed. And I'm just the man to do it. Yeah. So I feel like that's at the heart of what his intention is. I know it's arguable. Feel free to come to me with your point of view on what he was aiming for here. But I think this idea of like Mutiny needs shaping and guidance is like step 5 of his plan. We just got there too fast. So Jacob, is this backing down? It's sort of backing down. Jacob says, okay, start at 5, go down to 4 if you have to. 350 is the absolute bottom. And if they don't sign, you move on. Joe's going to kind of rub the back of his neck. Was this a win? We're going to see him get really creative with how he uses all of this information as the episode goes on. Okay, so now we're going to get a suburban shot. We're going to get a wider shot of some suburban neighborhood. And it kind of reminded me of Edward Scissorhands. I don't know why. There's no other reason for this to remind me of Edward Scissorhands, except I was just thinking about, I don't know, things that have a suburban feel. But there it is. That's the reference that came up for me. We're going to see some kids skateboarding in the street. We're going to see a car pull up, and it is Gordon and the kids. And they stop in front of a house. A couple kids run out of the house. They're here. The mother of those kids comes out of the house, Wendy. And then Gordon's brother comes out of the house because he did, in fact, go to visit his brother. Gordon cries out, "Land shark," whatever that means to them. Does that mean anything to any of you? Just curious. Gordon's brother then says, "Well, if it is an Alfred Einstein," which I took as like, these are just their greetings for each other, and we're trying to get as personal and familiar with them as possible. Because ultimately at this moment, you don't actually know yet that these are brothers. You know that he spoke to his brother in the previous episode. It's not super surprising that this is his brother, but this sort of like old school familiarity does help us get there quicker. So Gordon is smiling at him. The kids are in the driveway hugging. And then Gordon and Henry approach each other, and Henry's like, "You did it. You got off your butt. You put your feet to the ground. You actually showed up." They're going to give each other a hug. Henry then looks at Gordon's kids. He's like, "Joni and Haley, you girls must be 100 years. You must have aged 100 years since last time I saw you." They giggle because they're so cute. And he's like, "Thank God they got their mother's looks." So the kids are all going to go out back, and they're going to play with the new trampoline that Henry and they got for his kids. And Gordon's brother's like, "So how you doing? You all right? You all right, man? You got here awful fast." Gordon's like, "We'll get into it later." Ugh. That should be your sign that there's not great news coming. But for now, let's go to the Clark household. And Susan, Donna's mom, is over at the house. She has found the My Little Ponies. I think it's My Little Ponies that I'm looking at there, right? They don't really ever show you the perfect shot of them, but I think I'm looking at My Little Ponies. She pulls a couple My Little Ponies out of her purse. She gives them to Donna. She's like, "Here you go. Haha, found them." And Donna says, "Thank you for getting those." Joni practically refused to go to California without them. Apparently, Susan found them in the corner pockets of her husband's pool table. She just laughs, but Donna's serious, and Susan immediately knows the vibe of the room is not good. So she's like, "Are you okay?" Donna says, "Yeah, I just have to get to work." Susan says, "Well, I'm glad you took the morning because you look tired. Haven't heard from you since Easter. Gordon's been by with the girls." Donna's like, "Yeah, well, Gordon has a thing we call free time, Mom." Ew. As soon as Donna says it, she knows she's gone too far. It's not that she said anything particularly bad, but she just said it with a tone. Like, sarcasm was her tell. So she just goes, "Ugh, now I have to give more information." The way they're blocked here, I think it's really interesting because we see a moment in the beginning with both of them sort of in the same shot, but at this point, we've got Donna in the foreground, basically standing right in front of the camera. Susan is behind her further back in the kitchen, and we alternate between who's in focus. In these moments when they're blocked like this, they're never both in focus at the same time, which would make sense technically, but it also makes sense from a standpoint of like, they're kind of just, there's a distance there. So we're going to see, Susan trying to sort of poke at this. She says, "How about you tell me what's actually going on here? Is it you and Gordon? Are you two having problems again?" Annette O'Toole makes the most interesting little choice here. Is it you and Gordon, or are you two having problems again? And as she says problems again, she gives, it sounds like the lightest of chuckles. It's just like one chuckle, and she says it in the middle of a word. And she didn't laugh about it, but she did. And it was baked into the word. And it's kind of jarring, and it's such a judgment. And if you blink, you miss it, which isn't the expression if you hear it, but like, it happened so fast. And it gave me all these feelings. And then Donna, she's facing us, the viewer. and she's tearing up, and her mom can't see it. And she says, I was pregnant, but I lost it. I miscarried. And this hits Susan on a level. Susan is not going to be chuckling for the rest of this scene. She comes over to Donna, closer to us, and she tries to go in for a hug, and Donna evades it. She's like, I wasn't far along. I was waiting for the right time to tell Gordon. But then she's standing, she's holding a towel. You can see a close-up of her hand and her ring finger. She's sort of playing with it. She says, it's okay. It wasn't planned. And I'm so underwater with work as it is. You know, Gordon and I are practically leading separate lives. Her mom's hearing all this and she's looking concerned. Donna's staying busy. She's putting the sugar away and her mom's just standing there still. And after all this, she pauses and Susan looks at her. Annette O'Toole in this scene is so good. There was so little on the page and I got so much information about Susan here. Susan says, it'll get easier. It'll take time. And she kind of purses her lip. You could put those words on a page and they could be delivered a lot of different ways, and it wouldn't mean that much to me. The way she said it here makes me think she's been through a miscarriage. All she said was, it'll get easier, it'll take time. But I came away from this scene feeling that Susan has had the experience of having a miscarriage, and Donna probably didn't know that. And so Donna says, look, I love the children we have. It really wouldn't have been fair to them. It was a really special time when they were small, but we are in a different place now. Our family feels complete. And maybe in a way, this is what's best. And Susan is just standing there and tears are welling up in her eyes. So a lot of what we see around this storyline is unspoken. And I think it's one of those storylines that people often don't put language to it. It's a sensitive topic. It's a controversial topic. And so how shows choose to handle storylines like this are very tricky. What I think is noteworthy here is Donna just lied to her mom, which we'll know by the end of the episode. Donna is still carrying this secret. The only person who knows right now that she's pregnant is Boz. And she told her mom, but she told her she lost the baby, which we're going to find out she hasn't lost the baby. And so she's still carrying this secret. And now she's carrying this lie. And I don't know to what extent she clocks what her mom just laid down, but it seems like her mom has direct experience with the lie she just told. So there's like this real false bonding that might be happening here. There's a lot in this scene, but what did they really say? Like, what words are really getting used? Susan said almost nothing, and I feel this way about her. So, okay, we'll come back to this storyline in a bit, but for now, let's go to Mutiny. A bunch of the guys are in the living room. We've got Bodhi and Carl. They're working on setting something up. They're hooking some things up here. And Lev says, $10 says they're at it right now. This is kind of a fun way to set up everything in this episode, just this little scene here. Carl says, well, if I had $10 to burn, do you think I'd be back here wrestling coax trying to steal us HBO? All of this is pertinent. First of all, the guys, like Tom and Cam, have been sneaking around, haven't told the guys about their relationship, which is interesting. Like, why the need to do that? Who's to say? Why? So the guys know, but like Tom and Cam, it hasn't been confirmed that the guys know. So Tom and Cam are still sneaking around. They're wrestling with coax cable right now, trying to steal HBO, which is all going to become relevant for later. They're very much a get it done, figure out how to make this thing happen sort of a household. Bodhi does something that fries the TV, and Carl's like, damn it. Wonder Boy takes the bet. He goes to Lev. He says, all right, here's $10. He's holding cash. He gives it to Lev. Love's like, all right, follow me. And all of the guys, every guy in the house goes running. We are then going to cut to Cam and Tom in Cam's bedroom. They are making out. They are passionate. They are half clothed at best. She then, in the middle of all this, Lev knocks. I love this moment where Lev knocks and Cam, it looks like she wants to put her hand over Tom's mouth to keep him quiet, but she just gets his whole face. And I don't know if it was scripted that way, but when it seems like it was an accident, because Mark O'Brien, it feels like a Mark O'Brien laugh. She just gets his whole face, and Tom's just like kind of like laughs a little bit, and she laughs a little bit. And I don't know, it looked like a very real moment. That just like, I don't know, it adds this fun layer to the characters, but I think she just missed his mouth and got his entire face. So that happens. And Lev he puts the bait out. He says, a sub breached the network. He broke into the autoexec.bat file, and now he's giving out free user IDs. I mean, does this sound familiar, Tom? You know, Cam, it's a fire she needs to put out. Cam's shocked. Oh my God, she's in firefighting mode. She runs off of Tom. They start pulling their clothes on. They know just what to do. This is not a drill. They're pulling their clothes on. Tom's going to go out the back window. She's trying to get more information to diagnose the issue. Lev points from behind the door to all the guys, and they all run out the back door. And Cam, she's putting her clothes on, and she's like, how many IDs? Tom's going to kiss her goodbye. Then we're going to switch the view to Donna. This episode is so good in its moments of humor, and it's usually done with cuts. It's not like there's a joke on the page and the joke lands. It's like the cut happens in exactly the right way. So we get all this flurry of activity, and then we cut to Donna sitting in her car in the driveway. In this driveway, where all this stuff is about to happen. And we see from behind Donna's shoulder, but we can see her eyes through the rearview mirror. And she watches as almost everybody who works at Mutiny runs out of the house, runs out the door and around to the side of the house where Cam's bedroom window is. And they all run out, and you see her just processing it, like trying to figure, why is everybody running out of this house? And then we're going to see her straight on, and you just look at her face like, what is going on? And so the guys are now standing around Cam's window. We see Tom throw his backpack out, and then Tom throws himself out the window. His pants are mostly up. Not all the way, but mostly up. And all the guys start laughing. And Tom knows they're caught. And he's like, yeah. Okay, very funny. He says, all right, everybody go back to work, guys. Arky gives us the wonderful line, he wears boxers. And with all of this happening outside the house is now empty except for Cam. And Cam is going to walk out of her bedroom into the main room to see an empty house that's almost empty except for Joe. Joe is standing in the workroom. He is in the main like entryway area. By the way, from this angle, this house is actually beautiful. Look, the set decorators did everything they could to make it as chaotic as possible. There's cables all over the place. It's mayhem in that house. There's stuff all over. But when you actually look at the room, there's this, Joe walks in and he has to walk through this beautiful archway. I've never really noticed it before, but here we are. So Joe comes in, Cam freezes. This is not the person she thought she was going to encounter, nor is it the person she wanted to encounter. Joe walks in, he's got his blazer on and his glasses, takes off of his glasses. Cam freezes, and Joe says, so this is mutiny. I'm thinking back to the interview I did with Mary Griffin, who was a stand-in for Mackenzie Davis this season, and I'm wondering if this is the scene that Mary was referring to that made all of the ladies on set like actually swoon and gasp audibly, where they had to keep like re-recording it. That moment he takes his glasses off. Man, is he cool. And all he says is, "So this is mutiny," but this feels like the scene Mary was talking about. Am I right? Yeah. There's something very movie star quality about Lee Pace here. So this is mutiny. What a line, you know? Okay, so we are now going to go to the next scene, which is in Cam's office. And if we associate Joe with the color blue, that works really well here because we're in Cam's office, but we see a blue light that's bathing Joe. He's having a conversation with Cam and Donna, but it's Joe that we see first. And it's all this, you know, like all the tech, all this, I guess it's like their wall of power, their server room. I don't know what it is. But it's got all this blue button and blue light that's just filtering over Joe. We're going to hear the sound of paper rustling because Donna's looking over an offer that's been drawn up, the contract that's been drawn up. Donna says $5 an hour is unmanageable. She throws the papers to the side and says, "It's insane. If we have one bad month." Joe's looking at her with this kind of just fixed smile. It's just makes me furious. She says, "Or if we do well and we just want to make new hires, this just leaves us no room for error." Cam is just staring at Joe for all of this. Her gaze is fixed on him. It's like she's trying to read him. And at this point, she just shakes her head. Donna says, "This feels like a bait and switch." Well, this is a bait and switch, to be honest. Like, because this happened so fast, it's a bait and switch. Cam says, "Of course it's a bait and switch. It's Joe McMillan." Joe says, "It's not our intent." With Jacob Wheeler involved, Cam says, "Your fiance's dad." Joe says, "Things have changed. They evolved, and this was out of my control." He is so quick to just like pass that buck. Cam says, "Yeah, you evolved back into an asshole." "Oh, but look, he held out 3 days, so hats off." I mean, Cam just has such an instinct for what she thinks she's seeing from Joe here. And she's not letting up. She's not going to let him pretend this is Jacob's fault. Joe says, "Message received. I wanted to do you the courtesy of coming in person, but there are other companies who are interested in your space on their network, so I'll reach out to them." Donna and Joe both stand at the same time. Donna's like, "Hey, wait, give us a minute." Joe's going to sit back down. He's going to cross his one leg over the other, and he's just going to sit there bathed in that blue light as Cam and Donna go into Cam's bedroom. And Cam says, "Am I the only one who can see what's happening here? He's the man behind the network, and now he's changing our deal terms. What's next?" Donna says, "I don't like it either, but this network is the best thing that's happened to us. Right now, we need him more than he needs us." Something I love about the choices in this scene is when we see Donna speaking, we see Donna speaking. When we see Cam speaking, we see her through a mirror, which makes me feel like Cam's trapped in a mirror, which makes me feel like Cam's trapped. Donna is sort of an enabler in this situation. She's like, "This is the best thing that, even with the whatever this negotiation process is, this is the best thing that's happened to us." Cam's like, "That is so arguable. I don't even know what to say to you." But Cam's not saying any of that. Cam's trying to be professional Cam. She's, I guess, been trying to take the note over the last couple of episodes that she needs to be an adult in the room. And she is trying to apply that under pretty significant duress. But, you know, it's kind of beyond the pale for Donna to be sitting here and telling her this is the best thing that's happened to you. It's infuriating is what it is. So Donna's saying, you know, we need him, we need their network more than he needs us. And Cam says, "And he knows it." Donna says, look, if you can keep your cool, I can get us a number we can live with. And then he's back to being a name on the 12th page of her contract. Cam rolls her eyes, but she says, fine. I don't think Cam believes this for a second. I don't know if Donna believes it for a second either, to be honest, but she's certainly going to try. And she's taken it upon herself to lead this negotiation. Cam just needs to not blow up, is I think what they've agreed to in this room. And now we get another, like, again, this episode is not about comedy being jokes on a page. This is about scenes like this next one here. I was cracking up at this scene with Tom and Joe meeting each other. Tom and Joe. So we cut from Cam rolling her eyes. Fine. Agreed. We're going to cut from there to Tom and Joe in the kitchen, just the two of them, leaning up against the sink, just side by side, both just having some coffee, just chatting like two dudes. They're eyeing each other side by side somehow. There's such this interesting power shift and dynamic in this conversation. So Tom says, so you and Cameron worked at Cardiff together. Joe kind of leans over to him. He's like, we did. She must be an interesting boss. Tom sort of shuffles on one foot and he's going to say, well, she knows what she wants. Remember, Tom knows who Joe is. Tom is very well aware that Cam had a relationship with Joe. He's probably gotten an earful about Joe from everybody in the office, maybe except for Cam. I don't know for sure if Joe knows that Tom's in a relationship with her, but he might be clocking that here. So Tom says, she knows what she wants. So Joe smiles and he looks away from Tom and he doesn't start looking back at Tom for like a painfully long time. Basically, Joe just starts ignoring Tom while standing right next to him while Tom's trying to have a conversation with him. So to me, it seems like right here, Joe knows what Tom's doing and saying. So Joe, he looks away and he's sort of nodding. I know who this guy is next to me. Tom looks away again and then looks back at Joe. He's trying to be important enough that he still has Joe's attention here. Tom's like, so you did PCs for Cardiff. Joe says, I've been knocking around tech for a long time. He says all this, not even looking at Tom, but they're having a conversation with each other. It's so funny, this scene. Joe's like, I've always been working for the next new thing. And Tom's like, time sharing is not that new. And he takes a sip of his coffee and now he's got the power. So Joe has to look back at Tom. Joe's like, time sharing was just the way in. The way into what? Echoing the title of that previous episode that we saw where it was like, what's this the way into? I posit that it was always the way into Cam. And I only think that because, I mean, there's a lot of things that might support it, but I only really feel that way because we saw the episode where he was anonymously battling Cam in a tank battle game as a new user. It seems like he specifically looked for Cam to battle her. She didn't know she was playing Joe. So to me, that makes it feel like it was all the way into Cam. And I'm interpreting all of this as a design into Cam, but I'm absolutely able to acknowledge that there are many different things that all of this could have been a way into. So Joe's saying time sharing is just the way in. He looks back at Tom again because he has to prove himself again. He says CompuServe started as a division of a life insurance company and then got bought by H&R Block, who wanted to diversify. And now it's a 500-pound gorilla in a world commercial online service. Who knows where West Group could take it from there? I mean, he hasn't specifically spoken the idea to acquire Mutiny yet. That doesn't happen until the end of this episode. But doesn't it sound like he's already got all of this in his mind now? None of it feels accidental from this point. It just feels faster than you planned. So Tom hears all of this and he's going to lean back a little bit. He's going to put his coffee mug in the sink and he's like, all right. So he needs to flex a little bit. And he says, so how are you guys handling security? Are you multiplexing, task switching? He's going to use a string of, sentences worth of really technical language here that went completely over my head and probably completely over Joe's. And that was the point. It's a flex. So he uses all this jargon and then the two turn to each other and they just fully face off now. And Joe's like, there comes a time when vision meets engineering and you hire people. And Joe, ultimate power move, hands his coffee mug to Tom. Thanks for the coffee. It's like, you put this away. You're here to serve me, sort of a vibe. Joe's going to leave. Tom looks down at the coffee mug that's been put in his hands and he puts it into the sink. So he's basically doing Joe's bidding here. Now we're going to go back into Cam's office. We're going to go back under the blue light. And Donna said, okay, you've said your party line. I've said mine. Now let's cut the posturing and get down to the real number. Cam's sitting, Joe's sitting, Donna's about to sit. Joe says, it's $5. Donna says, Joe. Joe's like, $5. Donna says, no, see, this is where you say $4.50. And then I say $3.50. And then we eventually settle on $4, which is fair. And she's already overbidding herself and she doesn't know it. So Cam is staring at Joe this whole time. Donna's speaking, but Cam just keeps watching Joe because she's trying to read him. And Donna reasserts $4. Joe thinks about it. He's like, $5. Donna just blinks. What are we doing here? Joe says, this isn't a negotiation. You started at a promotional rate for like a minute. Who has like a 1 week promotional rate? Anyway, Donna says, I'm sorry. Now Cam looks at her. She says, this isn't a negotiation. Joe says, look, if you don't agree to the $5 terms, West Group is moving on. Donna smiles very tightly. Moving on? It's not. Joe says, charity? No, it's not. This is a partnership. Jacob Wheeler isn't interested in a typical landlord-tenant relationship. Side note that I have to be a little careful with. I once had a client who was uncomfortable asserting their own interests as being their own interests. And so they would just always mention other people in the community instead of them, like the board or the people in the community. She'd sometimes say people in the community. And I'd be like, I'm certain that's you. And this just reminded me of that, where it's like every time Joe says Jacob Wheeler, it's just his thoughts. So he says, this is a partnership. Jacob Wheeler isn't interested in a typical landlord-tenant relationship. Cam is staring at him this whole time. She has his number. She knows what's happening here. She just starts shaking her head. Joe says, he wants to work with innovative companies. Donna looks furious here. Wants to work with innovative companies who are agile and committed. $5 is the ante for this table. And if Mutiny can't compete at a going market rate, maybe they shouldn't be in the game. Cam still sits there just transfixed with him. And Donna is physically shaking. There she was trying to convince Cam a scene ago that it's all fine. I've got this. Not going well. So Joe and Cam are now staring at each other like Donna isn't even in the room. Donna sighs like she's breaking down, and now they both look at her. Donna starts to cry. Cam's like, Donna? She was like, Donna? There's a human moment that happens here for both Cam and Joe. They both look concerned and a little confused. Donna starts crying, and then she explodes. This is bullshit. Their eyes go wide. She throws the papers. She's like, this is bullshit. All you own is time on a network. What entitles you to have an opinion about anything that we do here? What makes you think that you can question our commitment for $1 an hour? She smashes something. She throws something hard to the ground. It sounds like glass and it breaks. I don't know what it was. Was it a plate? I'm not sure. Joe stands up because she's throwing things now. Cam goes over to like help pick up or clean up what she smashed. She's like, meh. Donna cuts herself a little bit on whatever it was, like glass or a plate. I don't know what it was. She says, maybe being in bed with a billionaire, I'm sorry, a billionaire's daughter makes you think you can jerk us around. Cam's like, Donna. Donna's like, for your amusement, but this is real to us. So it's $4, Joe. $4. And she says it, and it's like she's like she can spit the word $4 out. Joe sees this turn from Donna, and he's like, whew. He picks up his stuff. Kim's like, Joe's like, just don't even, don't bother. He leaves. Cam's gonna look at Donna. Donna's like, it's fine. It's all fine. Kim's just staring at her, open mouth. What was all of this really? And as Cam's staring with, again, Mackenzie Davis's most expressive face on the planet, we see Boz sort of angle behind Cam looking into the room because Donna smashed something, probably very loud that everybody could hear in the room. And Donna's like, no, it's fine. He's going to call in 3 hours and he's going to say $4. He's bluffing. And Kim is stunned, and we're going to leave the scene with that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on here, right? We know Cam at this point, we think it's possible Donna just miscarried. So there's that layer of emotion. We're going to know later on in this episode that she hasn't. She's still pregnant. Boz knows she's pregnant, doesn't know about a miscarriage. Cam doesn't know any of this, but Cam was the one who needed to be buffered in that room. And then here's Donna. What a mess. So we are now going to go to Gordon and his brother. They're drinking at a saloon. They're bathed in sunlight, which is quite lovely, especially when you compare that to the last scenes where Joe was bathed in that blue light. This is not golden hour, but it's, sunlight. Gordon's like, so that's where I'm at. So we just missed the whole part where Gordon explained his health condition to his brother. They're drinking beer. His brother is just caught completely off guard by all of this. He says, okay, anything you need, you just say the word. If the girls need to come over, if I need to go over there. Gordon's like, no, it's okay. And his brother's kind of reeling. He's like, I should be the one. What can I do for you? Gordon says, no, you're doing it. It's all right. It's all fine. Henry's like, Donna must be a mess. Gordon says, she doesn't even know. Henry's like, Gordon says, no, you have no idea what the last year has been like. Her work has taken off. It's driving her like mine used to do. She's happy. She's energized. She'd stop everything to take care of me. And I can't ask her to do that. Not yet. So he kind of feels like that's, I guess, a future they're heading towards, but he doesn't want to impose that on her. And that's his reasoning for not having told her. But to be honest with you, I feel like there were moments he might have been trying to tell her and she was trying to avoid having a conversation with him. So if she hadn't been doing that, he might have told her at this point. I feel like he might have told her. She just couldn't get off the phone fast enough or like get out of private conversations with him fast enough at any point to have these moments. So Henry stays silent for a moment and Gordon's going to drink. And then we're going to go back to Donna at the Mutiny Kitchen. She's washing a mug in the sink, probably the mugs that Tom and Joe left there. Let's be honest. So Kim's going to come in very delicately because what was all of that from Donna? Her arms are crossed. So she's like, so if we had to switch back to XTs, how long would that take? Kim, very practically, this is a possible reality that she needs to start considering. Donna says, nope, we won't have to do that. She's going to get her coffee. Kim says, okay, but in case we do, just like a round number. Just, I really like this approach with Kim because, again, she's probably the one who needed to be handled with kid gloves around Joe, but it turns out Donna was. And so Kim's just like, yeah, I know this is going to blow up in our faces. But the way she's approaching it, she's just like, maybe we should just consider the possibility of maybe considering the chance, just in case. Like, she's just trying to get Donna to be like, okay, let's brace ourselves. Donna says, look, I'm sorry, I don't know what else you want me to say. And look, they didn't even have enough time. Like, even if Donna had answered the question of what do we do if we need to use XTs, they just didn't even have enough time because Lev comes running in. You start to hear some commotion in the background. Lev runs in, he's like, guys, and he pulls them into the main room. Everybody's in there diagnosing a problem, talking over each other. Cam leans over to Wonder Boy's station and she sees that the screen, all it says is carrier not present. And that is what every monitor in the room says. We're going to see Bodhi and Wonder Boy. We're going to see Carl and Boz in the room and another coder who I haven't gotten the name of. We're going to see Cam and Donna in there. Donna's like, what happened? Cam, who has been trying to keep it together for this entire episode so far, now she explodes. This is everything she thought it would be. She loses it. She starts shouting. Joe McMillan happened. He pulled the plug, so I guess he wasn't bluffing. Oz, knowing what Donna's been going through, I mean, Donna obviously just didn't do them any favors in that room with Joe. And Joe is retaliating right now. And all of that is true. But Boz also knows what Donna's dealing with, and nobody else there does. And he is being protective of Donna here. And so, you know, Cam's like, I guess he wasn't bluffing. Boz is like, okay, to Cam, like trying to get her to lay off of Donna a little bit. Cam says, so do you want to call him maybe, or are you just going to cry again? Come on, Donna. She claps, like one of those very aggressive claps trying to get Donna's attention. She says, the name of page 12 on our contract just shut our company down because of your great negotiation skills. Boz shouts, Cam. She continues, she says, could you have had your day on the rag when the entire network wasn't at stake? Now Boz shouts, I said that's enough, damn it. Cam freezes when this happened because usually Boz would have her back. And in this situation, he's protecting Donna. He's trying to soften the situation and get Cam to stop yelling at her. He says, God, what's wrong with you, Cam? Donna has sort of taken all this in and she's being really internal. She's very much internalized all of this. She's very serious, very quiet. She says, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it. She leaves the room. And all of this, like, imagine being one of the guys working for that company and you just see, like, look, you can hear everything in that house, right? Even if they had gone into Cam's office to have this conversation, people would still hear them arguing. But they're not behind a closed door. They're in front of everybody. And Cam is just unloading. And everybody in the house they all know how Cam feels about Joe, the experiences that Cam has had with Joe, whether they've heard it from her or they've witnessed it, or it's, been a story that was passed down from person to person. So everybody in the house knows like all of these layers that are happening here, and they just watch as these two leaders within their company are just, Cam's at Donna's throat, and Donna made a big mistake, and Donna, runs away with her tail between her legs pretty much. And everybody just starts looking around like, oh my God, what was this? We're going to go back from here to the bar, where we're going to see somebody playing pool. We don't know who's playing pool because it's not Gordon or his brother. They're still sitting at the table drinking. And Henry is sharing what's been up with him. He says the shop's been slipping the last few years. I think we can pull it out, but Dad wants to sell it and let it get turned into a Midas. We are going to find out later that Henry is quite sugarcoating the situation. Gordon says, well, where does that leave you? Henry says, well, I'll stay on. I'll work for the new owners. Gordon says, well, that doesn't seem right. I'll call him. I'll tell him he's making a mistake. Henry's like, nah, you've got enough on your plate. But Henry really wants Gordon to make that call. And Henry is not arming him with the correct information should he make that call. Henry will easily be caught in this situation, but I don't know. He wants his brother to stand up for him, I guess. Gordon says, what time is it? It's getting late. And Henry's surprised. Gordon says, all right, should we settle up? Henry's, of course, going to get up to go to the bathroom, just convenient timing. He's like, could you get the tab? Great. So Gordon is now sitting at the table alone. He calls for the tab, and the person who brings it to him is Jules Duffy. And she's like, I'll be damned. Gordon, I thought you'd gone and become rich and famous on us. Gordon says, well, I got my plane parked out back. I'm here with Henry. Jules says, well, I see plenty of Henry. Because who is Jules? We haven't gotten that exposition yet, but we're about to. Gordon says, are you trying to get back what you had in high school? So Jules is Henry's ex from high school, and they all knew each other. Jules says, no, I'm just trying to get him to pay his bar tab every now and then. So now we're getting the real pieces of information. There might be a reason why his brother stood up to go to the bathroom when it was time to get the bill. So Gordon says, yeah, remember that time I caught you and Henry breaking into Dad's liquor cabinet? You made me drink a coffee cup full of brandy so I couldn't tell on you. So they tell that we get these stories. They obviously, all hung out. They all knew each other. So Gordon says, he makes reference to the house that they used to live in. He says, the house is still there. Come by anytime. So does Henry live in his parents' old house? Is that what we're meant to take away from that? Joel says, yeah, I'll crawl in through his old window, scare his kids and leave mine alone. Gordon's like, oh, so you have kids. I really like this line read coming up. Joel says 12. And Gordon's like, you have 12 kids? Joel says, I have one kid, 12 years old. I just really enjoy, there's like not exactly a reason for that line to be in here. It just is a fun little moment that they had there. She's going to laugh. She's going to show her tattoo. She says, he's my anchor. It's a tattoo of an anchor. She says the kid's name is RJ. Gordon says, Jules Duffy, married with a kid. Jules says, half right, single mom. All right, pay up. All right, so we're getting, they're sort of assessing, Gordon is assessing the situation. Does he know what's going to happen later is going to happen? I don't know that he does, but he's certainly asking all the questions he needs answers to. So, okay, now we're going to see that Cam, she went out back to some sort of a shed to try to cool down. Boz probably sent her there. And so she's standing in a shed. We're the camera is inside the shed looking out through her to like the outside. Boz is going to walk over. And Cam says, what the hell was all that about? Boz says, you're asking me? Because Cam is the one who just blew up. Cam says, yeah, she lost it. Now we're dead. Boz says, all Donna did was behave like you do every day without bailing you out for it like usual. Cam says, I never. Boz says, no. You didn't like it because it's like looking in a damn mirror. I mean, talk about tough love from Boz. Nobody but Boz could say these things to Cam. But when he says it, she's listening. Cam stops. Boz says, people have other things going on in their lives that you don't know about. She's like, oh yeah, and you do? Boz says, can't you see that woman is going through something? She could probably use a friend right now. And it makes Cam completely stop in her tracks. And she becomes very pensive. We're going to switch the scene, but I'm just this feels so earned to me. Honestly, there are not a lot of people who could have a conversation like this with Cam where she'd be at all receptive to listening. And I think even, like we're seeing her get a lot closer with Tom, and he can also have his arguments or disputes with her. He can share some truths with her. But he still has to be careful with her. And we're going to see that coming up in a minute, because there's a really interesting scene that we'll observe very soon coming up. But not even Tom, I don't think, could have delivered, could cool Cam down in this specific way to get her to be more receptive to Donna. So now we're going to see what Donna's up to. Donna, this is a really interesting scene in terms of the layout of this room. I got really confused about this scene partway through it. Donna's in a storage room Donna's in the server room at West Group Energy. When we first see where she is, it looks like, so she's surrounded by blue on two sides. Like we just see a little sliver where Donna can occupy, and it looks like she's standing in front of almost storage, like blue storage units, both in front of and behind her. And blue is all around her, and then we can see the reflection of her face in one of what looks like the storage units. But I think it was all an optical illusion for me, and I got really confused about what I was looking at. We can't yet see the person that she's talking to. Donna says, "I was out of line. I apologize." And we're then going to see a new angle on the scene. We're going to see it's basically a profile shot, a side shot. We're going to see it's Joe and Donna, and it's from way further back in the room. And I thought it was a weird sort of a rough cut where they somehow decided to switch to a completely different location, because it does not look like the same location to me. But I think it is. So they're on the side, and when you look from the side, I guess all of these units sort of like look like they blend into the walls and like it's a big open space. But when you look at their coverage, when you're seeing either Donna or Joe straight on, you actually see them through all these units that they're standing amongst, and they're big. It reminded me, this is a weird reference to make here, but did anybody ever see the movie Labyrinth with David Bowie and Jennifer Connelly? And there's this section, one of the great sections of the film, when she first gets into the labyrinth and she's trying to run through, she's trying to find the entrance, and she's running through, she can't find it, and she stops. And the worm, my favorite character in the whole movie, is like, "Hello." And it's like, tells her to walk in through the entrance. She's like, "There is no entrance. It's just wall covered with vines." And then the worm's like, "No, just get closer to it and you'll see what's really there." And she walks closer to it, and then she realizes that it was actually it all looked like a solid wall, but if she walked past it, she'd see that there was in fact another like hallway that she could get into. I don't know if that reference is particularly helpful unless you already know the movie, but it's sort of the same optical illusion that happened for me with this scene. That's a long way to say I was confused. So anyway, Donna is apologizing here. She says, "This work means a lot to me, and if we accept your deal, we're risking our survival. If we don't, we could scramble for months to try to find another network. Months in this business could crush us, and that's not what you want, is it?" Joe is just staring at her, expressionless. It's very disconcerting. She says, "If this is about Cameron," Joe says, "it isn't." It probably is. I don't know. I think it is. Donna says, "Well, then to pull the plug over $1, that's what you do when you're trying to get out of a deal." Joe says, "Yep, that's what's happening." Donna's wide-eyed now. She's like, "Well, I can't leave here until we work this out. I promised. So you tell me, what can I do?" And now Joe's got Donna on the ropes. And now he says all the things he was trying to get to happen. So he sighs and he says, "Well, maybe I can find some wiggle room on the price if mutiny meant a few strategic benchmarks." Like what? I've got a few that I can think of. Madonna's like, "Benchmarks." She doesn't even phrase it as a question. She's just repeating it back to him like, "Dear God, what are these benchmarks going to be?" Joe says, for example, when I log on to Mutiny, the main screen, it's boring. There's a company in Houston that has news and weather. There's another one that has a travel agency. There's an outfit in Galveston that has a stock ticker. That's the kind of thing that makes me, the user, want to stay longer. Donna's like, yep, okay, we can do that. Joe says, and another thing, check out the messaging available on IBM's VNet. Donna's like, mail programs have been around for over a decade. Joe says, exactly. Why doesn't Mutiny have one? Donna says, because that's not. And then she swallows all the rest of the words in that sentence, which is probably like going to be, that's not what we do. She swallows that part. She says, that's not, we can do mail. And we can do the interface. And if we do all that, she's trying to get Joe to make that the last of the benchmarks. And Joe's like, well, he's not going to like it, but I bet I can get Jacob to shave off a buck for one last thing. And now this is where he walks closer to Donna. The camera's sort of under, like below him, angled up. So he looks massive and very imposing. And he leans on one of those units. And he's got a smile on his face because he knows he's won this battle. And he's said, and so she knows that something else is coming. And Donna, through totally gritted teeth, says, what? What is it you need? And Joe says, well, Mutiny currently runs exclusively on Commodore 64s, and 64s are going to be boat anchors by 88. So in the meantime, Unix is poised to explode. If Mutiny could port to a machine that runs Unix, let's say the new AT&T box. Donna wants to fight this. You can see in her eyes. I think I could justify a lower price. One of the things that's kind of cool that they did with Joe here in this line is that he says the new AT&T box, but everybody else just calls it the AT&T. So it makes it seem like he's a guy who's been reading this. Maybe he found the language from somewhere, but it's not his language. He's like really close, but not quite there. This is a really big change, what he's proposing. And I have to be honest, like as I hear him put it out there, it sounds like a practical change to want in terms of the development of Mutiny. Like it does seem like it's risky for them to only like have this available for a computer that is maybe becoming obsolescent at this point. Having said that, it's not Joe's business. It's literally not Joe's business, because Joe's business would be giving them a chance to use their network, not anything to do with their business. Like if they're making, if West Group is making money off of this, what Mutiny does doesn't matter. If Mutiny can't be their client anymore, they get another client who can pay the $5 an hour that they want. So none of this really should be any of his business. But, Donna needs to make a deal here. So Donna's like, Unix is a completely different operating system. That's a major coding overhaul. Joe says, well, in fact, I would go so far as to plug you back in right now. We could ink the contract at $5 and add a provision that once you meet these benchmarks, we'll drop it down to $3.50, even lower than what she thought his bottom level was. Donna thinks she clearly wants to rip him a new one, but instead she chooses against it. She understands that she has a mission there. She smiles. It's not a real smile. And she says, I'll see what I can do. So we're going to go back to the kitchen at Mutiny. And I find this scene really interesting as well. Cam, she's just delivered this information to Cam. It's Donna and Cam in the kitchen. Cam's like, Unix? Christ. Donna says, I think he knew he wanted these benchmarks before he ever came over here this morning. It was just about getting the leverage. Cam sighs. It's like, yeah, of course. He's always angling for something. She says, well, I guess it was a negotiation after all. Tom's going to come in. He's going to open the fridge. He's going to look in the fridge. He's going to linger there for a second. He's going to decide what he wants. He's going to look over at Cam and Donna. He's getting some scoop. He wants to hear what's happening in this room. He grabs a drink, but he stays there and he's heard enough now. Cam says the AT&T isn't even in color. Donna says, well, let's look at the bright side. At least we have a stock ticker in mail now. And Cam's like, yeah, great. We'll be bleeding edge for 1979. Cam hates things like this. She wants to actually innovate. So Tom hears all this and he says, well, there are blueprints to build mail out since it's been around forever. It wouldn't take long. This exchange is particularly interesting to me. Tom just made it clear, like, we can do the thing that Joe asked for. It wouldn't be hard. Cam looks at him and she says, cool, thanks. In a way that suggests it's really not cool. No thanks. And Tom picks that up right away. So he sees that that isn't the angle here. She doesn't really want somebody to quickly do the things that Joe asked. He just proposed that. And that wasn't something that made her feel good or feel gratitude about, you know, his contribution. She was like, uh-huh. Tom says, just trying to help. And he just, that wasn't the way she wanted to be helped. And she actually very clearly communicated that to him. And he also had enough savvy to pick it up. Donna says, I don't know what other choice we have. And Cam gives a silent groan. That's the only way I can describe what she does here. It's a groan with no verbal language. Tom tries a new angle. He's really, really savvy to her. And that's what I get from this, like these couple of exchanges they have. He says, you could fake Unix. They both, Donna and Cam both freeze and they look over at him. He might be onto something here. Tom continues. It's like, say more. Tom says, you can make it look like mutiny is running on the AT&T. Cam, really cool choice from Mackenzie Davis. She stands up just a little bit straighter. It's not a lot, almost imperceptible, but she does. And so he's got her attention with this new angle of faking it. He says you could get your better rate locked in now, and you could actually go multi-platform at your leisure. Donna kind of shifts with a little bit of interest. Tom says, I talked to him this morning. He knows the script, sure, but his actual tech knowledge is really limited. If you get him in here tomorrow morning and sit him down at a demo and it looks real enough, Donna says, the boot and interface screens for the 64 and the AT&T are completely different. Cam says, yeah, but we can paint the screens however we want. We could write a Commodore program that makes it look just like the AT&T. Looks back over at Tom, and Tom gives a light nod. Now Cam's talking to Tom and she says, but Joe would know that porting to an OS like Unix would take longer than 24 hours. Tom's like, would he? He holds Cam's gaze. And I have to say, you know, like obviously all of this planning that they do, we're going to see that it backfires later. But I don't feel like Tom pushed them. I don't feel like he incorrectly assessed Joe, because you could then say, oh, Tom, it's all your fault for telling us that they all know Joe. They all have a sense of his capabilities. He doesn't have a lot of technical knowledge. He just had enough to figure out what they were doing. But in this whole moment, what this is really about to me is like, I think different people had different priorities in this conversation. Donna wants sort of forgiveness for having blown this whole thing up, and she wants a solution. Cam is looking for a way out with Joe, and Tom, and she's looking for, whether it's a way out or not, she wants to win. She wants to beat Joe. And Tom is trying to figure out what Cam needs. And he tries more than one option, and he finds one that lands for her, because he realizes it's what she wants is to beat Joe, not to be in good, solid business relationship with Joe. So Donna hears all of this and she's going to sort of roll her eyes, and Cam says, yeah, you're going to say it's a bad idea, right? And Donna's like, well, it is a bad idea. So we run the demo off of C64. We don't invite him till tomorrow night. And she looks at Cam and Tom. They lift their eyebrows with interest. They thought she was going to say no. Donna just leaves and leaves them to it. And Tom and Cam look at each other, and Cam smiles a little. Really fun scene. You don't always see a scene where you know for sure everybody has a different purpose, but they're all having the same conversation. So now the heist begins. This is where we get like the Ocean's 11 feel. There is a ton of technical language, and it somehow has to make sense to a human like me. And I've done a number of interviews now. Many are pre-recorded. They haven't dropped yet, but I've done a number of interviews where I've asked about this scene because I want to understand more about how you bring something like this to the screen in a way that somebody who has technical knowledge and somebody who doesn't can all be interested in what's happening. So Cam's going to lift the box, like the cardboard box, off of the AT&T. And Tom is going to like establish the rules. He says, the goal is simple, everyone. Replace the guts of this AT&T box with those of the Commodore. We're going to see a whole bunch of people in the room, basically the entire Mutiny team. He says, we're going to hook up the video cards inside to the monochrome CRT. Cam says, and when Joe boots up, he'll think he's running Unix, but it'll be our 64. Tom says, a wolf in Unix clothing. If you don't understand every other piece of technical language that comes after this, which I didn't, you actually have enough information here to understand the point of this scene. They're just trying to make it seem like they're using the AT&T, but they're using the Commodore 64 and dressing it up like the AT&T. So Cam starts dismantling at it. The whole team's looking over the components. Lev's like, oh my gosh, there's hardly any room in this thing. It only has enough room for an internal serial modem. How do we fit the external Hayes box inside? Tom's like, and the Commodore card. Cam says, well, we could lay the cards flat. We could connect them out the back with ribbon cables. Donna says, the metal connections will touch and short everything out. Tom says, well, we'll just put cardboard between them. But if we remember anything from all the conversations that happened with Cardiff Electric last season, Donna says, but then we'd have a cooling problem. Cooling always seems to be the issue here, doesn't it? If we can even fit the fan, she says, unless she smiles. And then Cam smiles because they're on the same page. She says, unless we don't even use the fan. Cam says, we could just turn it on before he gets here and kick him out before it melts. Bodhi's going to smile. Boz interjects here. He's sitting in the room. He's like the only one sitting down. He's listening to all this. And he just says, or you could just take your time and do all this for real. Cam loses her smile. Once again, it's the tough love that she probably needs to hear, right? Just, if you want the deal, be an actually good business partner. Because I think Boz knows, like, how does this thing play out, really? You annoy Joe, you frustrate Joe. Joe's got the leverage here. Cam, her smile is gone now. She says, we don't have that kind of time for $5 an hour. Boz says, so it's about the price, not about Joe. Cam says, well, it's about both. It's about not letting him dictate our vision. And you know what, guys? Fair. Who does Joe think he is? He is not doing this on good faith. Like, if this had been any other company, I don't know that he'd be imposing these benchmarks. He would just negotiate the $5 an hour and leave it be. So Boz says, couldn't all this make Mutiny better? These things that he wants? And you know what? Honestly, probably the whole thing about Commodore being a risky thing to bet on forever, it's probably true. But anyway, Cam doesn't want to hear any of this. So she just stares at Boz until he backs down, which he does. He says, fine, I'll leave you to it. And Cam, she's heard all this. She does look a little bit deflated. She's not smiling so much anymore, but they're going to continue on this path. We're going to go back to Gordon for a bit here. Gordon is looking at some pictures on the mantle, and he looks at a picture of him and his brother with his dad in his dad's shop when they were younger. Henry says, well, you were always the prodigy. Gordon says, well, not with transmissions. So it was a shop where they worked on cars. Gordon says, you always kicked my ass at those. Henry says, do you think that's the stuff that made you sick? It's a good question. And that's something the doctor had raised with Gordon previously. So could be. And that could be something that Henry needs to consider as well. So Gordon says, well, maybe, but that time in the shop made me an engineer. Guts in a machine equals guts in a machine. Like he's basically crediting that with, yes, maybe it made him sick, but also it gave him the rest of the career he wanted to have. Henry says, I bet Dad wishes you'd stayed behind to run this shop. Henry's got a real complex here, doesn't he? He's been told he's not the better brother, or thinks he's been told that for a lot of years now, I think. Gordon says, look, why don't I borrow your truck tomorrow and head up to Sacramento? I'll talk to Dad. Henry's like, yeah, I should warn you though, some jagoff backed into the truck a week ago. It's just got one headlight. It's good to see you though. So he just keeps lying to Gordon. We're going to catch Henry in a lot of lies this episode. And frankly, everybody's getting caught in a lot of lies this episode. This is the episode where people get caught in lies. 10Broad36. Okay, so Gordon is going to drive in that truck, but he is not driving to Sacramento. He's driving to the saloon, to Duffy's saloon. We are going to see the banged up front end of the truck. Gordon's going to walk out. He's going to look at the front end. It's like, wow, that really is a mess. And Jules comes out of the saloon. And Gordon says, thanks for meeting me. So this was the plan. Jules says, where do you want to have this talk? Was he ever planning to go to his parents' or his dad's? Probably not. Gordon says, hop in. We're going to go to their next location, which is they're at the side of a lake, just amongst the trees. It's a beautiful setting. And it's daytime. Gordon says, so how often during the work week? He wanted to have a conversation with Jules about his brother, at least that much, right? So Jules says, well, probably less since the bar fight, but probably still like 3-4 days a week, often before noon. So Henry has a drinking issue. Gordon says, does Wendy know? Jules like, yep, she knows. Gordon says, what about the truck? Jules says, well, he stayed after close a couple weeks ago. Next day, he said he swerved to avoid a deer. Gordon says, I called my dad. So he did have that conversation, but he had it already, and he had it over the phone instead of in person. Gordon says, I called my dad, and it was a rabbit when he heard that story. He just looks out at the lake, kind of staring out into the distance. Jules says, well, that's it. That's this boring story of your alcoholic brother. I think you've heard enough. So I think it's time to get home to my kid and stop narking on my high school boyfriend. And then she notes the irony of that. She says, I mean, anyway, I've got weed in my purse right now. Call myself a mother. She laughs. They laugh. But Gordon, he looks at her kind of interested when he says this. And he says, I'm sure you're a great mother, but how about that weed? So I don't know what Gordon's designs were at this point. Do I think he came out here to have an affair with Jules? I don't know. I think he's kind of out of control right now. I think he's like in this weird daze from finding out about his health condition. And I think he's trying to get control of like what things are right now, what his life is. Like, does anything matter? Does everything matter? Okay, so we're going to cut from here we're going to go back to Mutiny, and we're going to see the plan is still in progress. They're trying to get everything set up. Carl is under the table. He's working on the wires. And they're all continuing to assess, like they're problem solving their way through this. So Tom says, okay, so the external modem won't fit. The box is big enough, but it's not tall enough. Ton of tech speak here. And Cam says, well, yeah, an external modem would give it away though. Donna says, well, could we fake an online connection? Do we even have to bring this thing online at all? What if we have Joe dial into the network, but he's actually just linked to another Commodore in the house? Cam is very impressed with this idea. She's like, I've completely corrected you. Tom says, okay, yeah, it's a great idea, but what cable is going to be fast enough and also not completely give it away by being out in the open? And hey, remember that little short moment that we had at the start of this episode where they were trying to get the HBO going? So Lev says, aha, wait a minute. What if, hey, Carl, did you guys ever get that HBO working? Carl says, well, kind of. We were watching Cat People the other night, so you could see about like half a boob. Now that's a great 80s reference right there. If you've ever seen Cat People, that's a weird movie. I guess horror movie. One of the first jump scares ever. Yeah, that's the movie they saw. Part of it. Cam says, coax. Now everybody is excited. Tom's excited. He's like 10Broad36. We could use Ethernet encoding. Plus the cable's already hidden along the wall. They're all excited. Donna's excited. Cam's like, yeah, we can just adjust it where we need to. Tom says, okay, wait, we still need to hear a modem though. How do we do that? Cam shouts, Bodie. Bodie is under the table. Was he helping Carl or was he just like under the table sleeping? I don't know. He sits up and he's wearing a fez. What is happening in this office? So he sits up and she's like, do you still have that recorder? He's going to nod. She says, go record the sound of the modem connecting, and then we'll pull out the recorder's power switch. We can run wires out of it and we can stash it into the AT&T. Donna's laughing now. Tom is smiling. They're just all like, the ideas are really flowing here. They're all in a flow with each other. The idea is somebody's going to pinch some wires and activate the recorder sound. Bodie's like, on it. Cam says to Tom, how much time do you need for the coax? Tom says 2 hours tops. They're all very happy with themselves. They've solved all the problems. They've thought of everything, we think. Meanwhile, in a much more laid back vibe, Gordon and Jules are smoking up. And Gordon says, I was so paranoid after that first experience. I stopped getting high till college. Jules like, yeah, but then you made up for it. Gordon says, yeah, it was Berkeley. Jules says, okay, yeah, you were always the smart one. Gordon says, if I was so smart, why did you go out with Henry? It feels like things take a turn right about here. There's a lot of like, oh, were you interested in me back then? Oh, were you interested in me back then? What a conversation here. Why did you go out with Henry? He asks. She says, well, I was 16. He was the cute one. Gordon's like, ugh. She says, but he was never as funny as you are. He could catch a pass, but you had us laughing in the stands. And Gordon says, it's been a while since anybody's thought of me as funny. It's interesting who we grow up to be. Did you ever think about who you could have been if you took a different path? They look at each other. Reed, did you ever think what would it be like if we dated? That's not how she takes it in the conversation. She says, yeah, sure, but what are you saying? That you should have done something else? You should have stayed here, sold tractors or something? You've got nothing to complain about. Gordon does currently have something to complain about, but it's not that. So Gordon says, well, it feels good to sit here and do the wrong thing with you. He just looks up at the sky. He says, like, I don't want to keep you. I'm sure you've got better things to do. Jules is like, yeah, I sure do. And then we're going to see the camera angle switches. We're going to be inside the truck looking out through the back window to Jules, like any good voyeur would do here. She says, I'm having a good time. Gordon looks at her. She looks back. He leans in. They kiss. It gets hot and heavy. They're going to have sex. By the way, I'll come back to this in a minute. Gordon, I don't know. I mean, was this his plan coming out here? Kind of feels like it, but I mean, like, do you take Jules to the lake if you want to have a conversation? Just go back into the bar. I don't know. So it does feel like he kind of angled for this. It feels like he's a little out of control right now. We're going to go back to Mutiny. It's now demo time. We've got this classic shot. We've got Joe sitting at this rigged machine, and everybody is kind of positioned to execute the plan. Cam says, okay, log on. He does. We're going to hear a modem sound because somebody's pinching the wires behind the wall to try to make the sound happen. Lev is at his station. Joe's going to see the monochrome screen. He's like, not bad. Cam says, yeah, for monochrome. Play something, she says. Joe says, all right, well, I want to see male. We're going to see his face. And we've seen this previously with Donna in an earlier episode, but we're going to see Joe's face in the reflection of the screen. So again, it's kind of like he's trapped in the screen. Cam says, well, the mail is inside the game, so just select what you want to play, and then you're going to find Lev on the user list. Lev says, I'm new wave Lev, so that's who he needs to look for. Donna says, hit Alt-M for mail. And Joe says, yeah, but it's still community. Donna says, no, we built the mail client on top of the existing code. So if a user is online, they get the message instantly. So it's basically instant messaging, not mail. So she says, if they're offline, Lev goes and signs off. She types in the message, what hath God wrought? And then Lev's going to sign back on and he's going to get that message on his screen. In case you're wondering, and I never noticed this before, but I looked this up. What hath God wrought? This is the official first Morse code message that was translated in the US on May 24th, 1844 to officially open the Baltimore-Washington telegraph line. So historically, it is a thing, and it makes a lot of sense. That would be something that would be like very accessible in terms of knowledge for Donna. So Joe sees all this. He thinks it's clever. Cam's like, okay, that's what you asked for. Joe says, looks like it. Cam goes to shut off the computer and Joe says, wait, hold on a second. I've got a game open. He wants to play it. So he plays it. I don't know if I totally understand this, but he then plays 3 successive chess games that take like 3 seconds each. I don't know. Does he just keep stopping the game to restart and test it? Does he feel like something's up? So he plays chess 3 times. And now the people in the room are starting to get nervous. Cam's like, he's going to spot something here. Joe says, I find it remarkable that 3 different mutiny users opened with the same King's Indian defense. It's almost as if they were programmed to do so. Uh-oh. Jig is up. Joe's going to look to the side of the computer and he touches the table. The whole table is hot and it's like the wood is melting. He says, oh my God, the computer's melting the table. He goes to the back. He takes a screwdriver. He starts pulling the whole thing apart and he sees the guts. He sees the recorder. He says, oh, that's interesting. I've never seen a Commodore like this before. He pulls out the recorder. This must be an exclusive model. They're caught. He just starts pulling more and more of this machine apart. He's like, oh, look, there's no modem. I'm not even online. He looks at Cam. He says, Unix, you couldn't do it? He folds his arms. And Cam, she's hunched over. And it's not so much in defeat as in like, I've had enough of this crap. She says, it's not that we couldn't do it. We just thought it was a waste of time. Joe says, but you did have time to animate the games, got the box, fake the data. Nobody in the room wants to meet his gaze except for Cam. Cam is like, I've had enough of you. Remember, like they could have done all this legit. Tom was offering solutions initially. She's like, I don't want to hear it. She stared him down and made him change tactic. And it's like, she wanted to beat Joe. She wanted to humiliate him. And that's what she's trying to do. So Joe says, so how are you streaming it? He looks into the components of I love this shot. He looks into the components of the machine, but the camera now is inside the machine looking up, directly up at Joe. Joe looks through the components and he just rips them out. We see it from underneath. Now we're going to go outside the house. Joe runs out of the house. Cam follows him. She calls to him. He says, oh, you want to insult me again? Say I'm a bad guy, a bait and switch artist. I put you on the network. I handed you a deal my boss didn't want you to have. I don't know. I mean, it's true. She insulted him in that room and she was trying to humiliate him and beat him. But he did ultimately do a bait and switch. That is materially what happened here. He says, I put you on the network. Didn't even ask her about it. We never gave her that choice to begin with. I handed you a deal my boss didn't want you to have. Is the boss was prepared to go down to 350, no strings attached. So he attached these strings. It's true in his head, right? Anyway, so he opens the car door. She's going to hold it. She says, don't do this to me again. He says, you did this to yourself. What kills me is you're so much better than this. I mean, they're both right and they're both wrong here. Yeah, she was trying to get one over on him on principle, and he finds that out. But was he really being like kind and generous in this process? No. He was not. Like, we have a lot of evidence to support that he's telling half truths here. So, but I think he believes his own lies. He's going to slam the door, drives away. She screams into the night. She's going to sit on the steps. We're going to hear footsteps coming down the stairs because she's sitting at the bottom of them. Donna walks down and sits next to her. There is silence between them for a full 15 seconds. I counted. It, wow, is it a powerful silence? And Donna breaks it with, I have to tell you something. And this, I'm sure in Cam's head, what's still resonating is Boz saying, something's up with that woman. She probably needs a friend. Cam is ready to hear this. Cam looks at her. So all of this, it's nighttime now. And where else is it nighttime? It is nighttime at the lake. Gordon and Jules have been doing it for hours. What on earth? They're getting dressed now. It's night. It's past the girl's bedtime. It's crazy. She's like, well, this night took a turn. Gordon says, can I be honest with you? Jules says, well, I'm a big girl. I know what this was. Gordon's like, it wasn't that. Actually, there's something wrong with me. She's like, yeah, right. He's like, no, there's really something wrong with me in my brain. I've had problems with my hands and my speech. I might not ever be the same. I may get worse. She gets really serious. This really did take a turn. She says, I'm sorry, Gordon. He says, I'm really scared. She says, well, it's okay to be scared. I'd be scared too. Gordon says, well, part of me wanted to believe that if I didn't say anything, it wouldn't be real, but just the weight of it all. She comes over. He holds her hand. Gordon says, you just can't imagine what it's been like. I mean, what does this mean? What about my kids? Am I going to wake up one day and not feel my legs? Are they going to have to put me in a home? This is heavy stuff. Jules did not sign up for this. Jules is feeling very uncomfortable now. He's like, Jules, I could die. I haven't even told my wife. She's like, what? What is happening here? She's like, I came here for an affair, man. Gordon says, I can't. It's her job. I've just been carrying this all alone. She's like, stop it. Boundaries. She's gonna throw up a nice solid boundary here. She says, what are you doing, Gordon? He says, nothing. We're just talking. She's like, nah, you're dumping this on me. What is all this? Is this why you brought me out here to unburden yourself? And he's like, no. She says, if you wanted somebody to talk to, she doesn't even have a way to finish that. She's like, I came here for an affair. So she looks really disturbed. She grabs her stuff from her truck. She's going to leave. She's not going to drive back with him. Gordon's like, no, you don't understand. I'm grateful to you. Bad word choice. That's not the word here. So her eyes go wide. She's like, grateful? Ugh. He's going to shout after her, but he ruined this. He ruined it. He ruined a lot of things here. Okay. We are now going to see what's another vehicle in motion. It's Donna and Cam. Donna's in the passenger seat. Cam is driving. It's nighttime still. And we're looking at Donna. Cam looks over at Donna. They're not talking with each other. Cam pulls into a parking lot, turns off the car. Cam says, you know what? Look, mutiny might be dead tomorrow. Like, it literally might not exist anymore as of tomorrow. So if you're doing this for the company, whatever this is, and Donna shakes her head, she says, that's not why I'm doing it. She gives a weak smile. She gets out of the car. Cam's like, do you want me to come with you? Donna says, nah, it's fine. And then she closes the door. She starts walking. Cam says, okay. Donna's walking towards the building. The signage of the building is out of focus until Donna gets closer to it. And then we see that it's Planned Parenthood. And Cam is like, what am I doing? She gets out of the car. She runs to catch up with Donna and she walks with her into the building. So we don't get this named. But what do we learn here? We know Donna lied to her mom. She didn't have a miscarriage. She's been pregnant this whole time. She's made a decision to end it. We don't name it an abortion. I don't know. A lot of shows don't do that. They don't want to, they'll come up with all kinds of euphemisms. They'll find all these different ways not to have it happen. They'll do a miscarriage so the character doesn't have to even consider an abortion because there's all this baggage and controversy that comes around it. So this show, I mean, they don't give you a name for it, but that's what's happening here. Gordon doesn't even know she's pregnant. He doesn't know about any of this. And frankly, she doesn't know like about his diagnosis. And so like that is a whole layer of the complexity of the reveal she would have had for Gordon. She just doesn't even know about. But you know, Cam puts all of this business crap that they've been dealing with aside and just does this with her. All right, so now Gordon, he's pulling in his truck into the driveway of his brother's house. And we're going to see inside the house, Wendy is hugging Haley, who is crying on the sofa. She's distraught. Henry's on the phone, probably with his dad. He's saying, I don't know where. And then Gordon comes in. He's going to see Haley crying. He's like, what happened? Are you okay? Haley says, where were you? She's crying. Henry says, she woke up. She didn't know where you were. I tried, Dad, but I guess you didn't make it there. And Gordon doesn't even have the presence of mind to try to lie about this. He just says, yeah, I had to stop and talk to Jules about a few things for many hours from day until after the girl's bedtime. Henry's like, are you kidding me? Wendy's like, Henry says, like hell, you were just talking. Henry sniffs Gordon and sort of, it's like a sniff shove. He sniffs him and shoves him at the same time. And he says, you smell like weed. And you also smell like Wendy. Says, Henry, what is going on? Henry says, what's going on is my brother's a selfish little prick and he always has been. I thought you were driving up to talk to Dad and help me out. So, I mean, Henry not feeling great about Gordon going after Jules, but is it that bothers him more than the fact that Gordon didn't prioritize trying to save Henry's financial state, his job, all of that? I don't know. I think it feels like a betrayal on more than one level to Henry. Wendy is going to bring Haley upstairs to get her sort of out of this conflict. And Gordon says, I talked to Dad on the phone before I went to Duffy's. He said you leveraged the shop into the ground over the past 3 years and pissed away half. Henry's like, that's bullshit, except it's true. Gordon says, he's worried about you. I'm worried about you. All this would be great if Gordon hadn't just slept with Jules, but he did. So the whole, we're worried about you stuff doesn't really fly in that sense. Henry says, okay, let me get this straight. So you bang my ex-girlfriend, cheat on your wife because I drink too much? Touche, Henry. Accurate. Neither of them is really taking accountability in this conversation, but at least they're both consistent about it and matching each other's level and doling out harsh truths to each other. There you are. Ah, family. Gordon says, wait, no, we were just talking. Henry says, you're lying to my face. Stop it. You can't stay here tonight. You can't. Gordon says, but the reason I flew out here, Henry's like, you're going to leave now. Go. Haley comes to the stairs and she's crying. She's standing at the stairs. She's like, Daddy. Oh my God, it breaks your heart. Gordon, he's like, come here, sweetie. He grabs her, he picks her up, walks with her. So we are now going to go over to the Clark house. I suspect a few minutes elapsed here. Donna's sitting in the living room. She's just in a robe. She's just pondering life. It's a very quiet, dark room, but the phone rings and the machine is going to get it. And we're going to hear a very happy Clark family with their outgoing message. You reached the Clarks, they all say together. And then each of them says their name, Gordon, Donna, Joni, Haley, and they all say, leave a message. It's like, talk about a family that's not actually happy right now. And then you're listening to their message, hearing the happy family. I mean, really, it couldn't be a more perfect juxtaposition. Gordon leaves a message and Donna overhears it. Donna, are you there? And you can hear Haley in the background crying, Mommy. And he says, Haley, it's okay, into the message. Donna gets up. She sort of like run limps to the phone. She picks it up. She's like, I'm here. Is everything okay? We're going to now switch to the view of where Gordon is. It looks like they're in a hotel room with a double bed. And the girls are on the bed. They're awake. And he says, she woke up. Haley woke up. There's some bedtime thing you do. She said it would help. It sounds like, of course. Does she have Jinx? Her little, was that a little elephant doll? Gordon says, yeah, she's lying down with him now. Donna says, okay, put the phone on the pillow next to her. Joni is on one side, Gordon's on the other, Haley's in the middle. The two girls sort of huddle together. They're awake, but Gordon puts the phone up next to Haley's ear. And he just kind of puts his arm over the two girls. Donna says, hey, baby girl, you okay? Haley goes, mm-hmm. She nods. Donna says, you listen really carefully, all right? Haley says, mm-hmm. She nods. It's so upsetting. She's so sad. Donna starts singing Baby Mine, except she's changed it to Haley Mine. She says, Haley Mine, don't you cry. Haley Mine, dry your eyes. Rest your head close to my heart, never depart, baby of mine. And as she's singing, we're going to see Gordon like just tears sort of falling down his face. He can't necessarily, I don't know that he can hear what she's singing on the phone exactly, but he kind of has a sense of it. And he's just thinking about what he's just done and what he still has, all the things he has to tell Donna. And yeah, he's crying. He wipes his eyes, and Haley like falls asleep instantly. This thing works like a charm. And then as she finishes the verse of the song, we're going to hear Donna hum. We're going to see her humming into the phone, sort of in that quiet, dark room humming. And then the most beautiful editing choice was made here. We go to a black screen, and you could think it's the end of the episode, and it feels like it's the end of the episode. Black screen, and you still hear just Donna's voice humming. And we linger on that for long enough, and then we are going to cut to one more scene, but it made me start to tear up myself. By the way, it's so funny because this song it was written for the movie Dumbo, the 1941 animated version of Dumbo. And I think I watched this movie once when I was really little, and I have almost no memory of the movie. I have a vision in my head, like a snapshot of a bunch of like maybe birds, like crows on a wire, if that's a thing. The first time I saw this show, I was like, where do I know that song from? And I thought it might be from Dumbo. I have no idea why I would think this song is from Dumbo, because I saw it once when I was really little and I don't remember it. But I don't remember having to look it up before I knew that it was from Dumbo. I remember looking it up to confirm it was from Dumbo. I just went and watched that scene back, a clip of it on YouTube. Oh my goodness. No wonder that memory stuck out. It is a tear jerker. There are characters crying. Like, my God. You don't even need to see the whole movie just to have that scene, have it land, have an impact. But what a sweet song that they picked here. And by the way, this is going to be a resonant song in this show. I'll just say that much. I'm not spoiling anything, but just say, like, remember Donna singing this. It's a lovely moment. So we are going to get one more scene. After this beautiful mother-daughter moment, we're going to go to Joe and Jacob. Joe is looking out the window at Jacob's office, and Joe says, 2 days ago, you told me I was the building manager, that our involvement with our network partners ended at the rent we charged them, and I disagreed. So here's what I did. And Jacob's like, again with this guy? You did it already? Whatever you did it already? Joe says, I gave Mutiny a specific set of benchmarks, the goals I wanted them to achieve in exchange for a reduced network rate of $3.50 an hour, the floor you specified. Jacob's like, yeah, I'm sure you did. This is beginning to feel like a pattern. How am I supposed to trust you? Joe interrupts him. He says, here's what happened. They completed the first 2 in 24 hours. The third, they deemed a waste of their time, but they didn't tell me that to my face. Instead, they tried to deceive me. Jacob smirks. He's like, well, now you know how it feels. Joe says, here's the interesting part. To avoid doing it, they ended up using a sophisticated Ethernet encode and streaming data over line they were using to steal paid television. The technology is called broadband. So new, it's only being used in a couple college campuses and military bases. Commercially, it's too expensive and there's not nearly enough line laid, but 10 years from now, it's probably going to make modems irrelevant. And these kids rigged it up on their own in a day. Jacob sits back. Opportunity is the language both of these two speak. Jacob sits back and says, what's your point, Joe? Joe says, I think we should acquire them. Joseph McNillan, I can't with him. I just leave Cameron alone, leave Donna alone, leave him alone. But he will not. That was not his mission here. I think, I don't think he looked into this. I think, did he know that they were going to deceive him when he put all these benchmarks down there? I don't know. But do I think that he was trying to aim for the acquisition angle the whole time? I do. And why do I? It's because he had that conversation with Tom where he talked about a company that got acquired by a bigger company and he likened it to West Group. And so it's like, yeah, I think this was absolutely in his mind. It was just a matter of how they got there. And yeah, I think we're following a quicker timeline, but leave Cameron and Donna alone. My goodness. This is so painful. I'm furious. Yeah, I mean, I really do think that this is all part of a plan. I guess I think that Joe, he has plans that have sort of like tentpole moments. They're like these milestones, benchmarks he needs to reach to achieve his plan. But what happens, like the details, the particulars of it could fluctuate as long as he gets to those major moments. So I think that's sort of big picture how, like, if I think about what he did at Cardiff, it was like, okay, meet Gordon. That's one thing. Do that. Like there were certain objectives that he had to reach, like get Gordon to reverse engineer IBM PC and Garage. Great. However that looks, that's fine. But then call IBM. Like all of these things happened. And it was just the major notes of it that he needed to hit. And then the particulars of it worked themselves out. And I think that's what's happening here too. So I think he's been angling for acquisition because he's dropped the hint earlier to Tom that he was, but how they got there was a little bit more freeform. So that's how I think Joe operates in this whole cycle. Let's talk about some music, shall we? All right. First of all, this episode opened with Lucky I Got What I Want by Jungle from 2013. This is when Joe is going to leave that message for Sarah. Then we're going to hear Bought and Sold by the Rogues from 1985. That one is, we're going to hear that when Tom's sneaking out of Cam's window, and it gets louder when Joe arrives at Mutiny. In the bar, we're going to hear Rider by White Eyes from 2015. And that's what we're hearing when Gordon and Henry meet up with Jules. And then, of course, there's Baby Mine, which is a song that Donna sings. We don't hear like a pre-recorded version of that song. But originally, that song was from Dumbo from 1941. It was sung by Betty Noyes. And that's the song that Donna sings to Haley. So that is the music. Now, in terms of my favorite quote, I've got a few that I really liked. From Gordon, he says, this is an honorable mention. Gordon says, guts in a machine equals guts in a machine. And I think that really like is the story of Gordon's professional development. Then we have one from Tom. This is another honorable mention. He says, a wolf in eunuch's clothing. My favorite quote of the episode is one of those tough love quotes from Boz to Cam, where he says, all Donna did was behave like you do every day without bailing you out for it like usual. I mean, Boz really gets through to Cam in this episode. And again, not everybody could. And when I compare it to how the way Tom had to approach Cam to figure out what her real objective was with Joe, she was ready to be like, I don't want to hear this from you. And he had to switch tactic to avoid her wrath. And then they ended up landing on, we're going to try to trick Joe, right? So Tom can get through to him in his way. Boz gets through to her. Tom can get through to her in his way. Boz gets through to Cam in his specific way. And I think that they have different things that they're able to influence her on. All right, it's feedback time. And we've got a couple new people today, and I'm very excited to welcome Amelia Flowers, who has been catching up on a bunch of different earlier episodes. What I love about when people are catching up on earlier episodes is that they bring up things from previous episodes that always seem like they're coming back around right at that moment in wherever I am in the rewatch. So Amelia is a fan of Lee Pace and really takes a close eye to the stuff that's happening with Joe, and Ray's comments about many of the early episodes from season 1, but there's a comment from season 1 episode 4 that felt resonant for right now. Amelia says this: Joe always gets cast as the big bad, but there are reasons. The greater good. It doesn't excuse him, but if he trusted Gordon and Boz and Cam and got them on board, things might have played out differently. The problem is that because of his life experience, he can't do that. He only knows one way to operate, and because of that, no one will trust him. Joe manipulating Gordon and Cam and, well, everyone. Who did he learn that from? Who would be disappointed in him if he didn't do that? Joe must have had such a love-hate battle going on with himself. This is why I have so much empathy for Joe. He's tough and developed that hard outer shell for protection. He had to survive. But he's still perceived as the bad person pretty much throughout the show. Also, side note, Google the actor who plays Joe Sr. when he was young. It's very believable that he was Joe's dad. Okay, Amelia, thank you for all of that. And I sort of strung all of that together, but I'd like to unpack it a bit here because I love being able to look at what happened in season 1, episode 4, Close to the Metal, here, because that is the episode where Joe did this whole rigmarole around getting the reporter to the office, making it look like Cam's data all got wiped and he had just transferred them to different disks that he was holding. And then Donna ends up coming in and saving the day. And he thought he would have been able to save the day, but he did all of this to get a story. Joe deprives himself of the opportunity of seeing what teamwork looks like, because had he just revealed his ultimate goal to the teammates he was working with, to his colleagues, that he wanted to get this guy to do a story on them, he might have had their support in the process and not had to trick them and create any amount of tension or animosity through it. But instead, he does all this stuff and he puts himself at odds with his team, and he doesn't actually have to do all that. And I see it the same way here, where Joe has gone through tremendous lengths to ultimately try to acquire power over Mutiny. When, is there any chance that he could have approached Cam with the support of Boz, maybe with the support of Donna, with a really good business deal and a good faith interest in all this, and said, you know what? I would like to pitch this to my boss, to Jacob Wheeler, to the owner of my company. And I'd like to have you be the first company that tests this out. He could have gone to them with an actual olive branch. And instead, he goes to them with all the stuff he just went to them with, and he creates a wider gulf between them. So, I think about all that. And then I think about Amelia's point here about how, like, why does he do all this? Why does he have to go through the manipulation versus having the straightforward, honest, forthright approach to this? Well, he learned all this from his dad. He learned all of this in that household. How does it, if this feels like, his dad probably operated in an even sneakier way than all this, if that's possible. And he learned that. And all of this is part of his way to, maybe that's how he learned success happens, or maybe it's all about impressing his dad, but it does feel like he learned it from him. Also, by the way, I did look up the actor who plays Joe McMillian Sr. when he was younger. My goodness, there's one particular headshot of him that at just the right angle, he's like Admiral Eyebrows too. It's wild. Very well cast. So thank you for that, Amelia. Can't wait to see more of your takes. And there are more that you shared that I'm going to save them for the right episode. Because there's plenty of opportunities. We'll be able to bring those up later. And now, Frackin' Toaster Lava! Also coming in with a comment about season 1, episode 4 that I've been holding on to for a minute. So the comment is, Gordon telling Donna that Cameron was white trash is pretty ironic, knowing that from what we see of Gordon's family in season 2, he's not far from being white trash himself, unlike Donna or Joe, who both have rich, successful fathers. It's all coming back around here, isn't it? And that's the one where actually the people who tell Cameron about this white trash comment is Haley and Joni. And that takes a real turn, and Cameron gets mad at that. But yeah, we're now starting to see what Gordon's upbringing was. We've seen Donna's parents. We've seen Joe's dad. We haven't seen anybody really in Cam's world, but now we've seen Gordon's brother and family, and we've learned a lot more about his upbringing. And it wasn't an easy place to start. And even Henry, like knowing that Gordon has this illness that possibly came out of the family business, it's like, but this is what our options were. This was it. There's nothing you can regret about it. So that was a fun one to bring back in. And now, the person who made this comment is going to become more and more relevant when you hear the next 2 comments after this. But I am very pleased to welcome Synthetic Gerbil to the feedback section. Synthetic Gerbil is also new to the podcast and catching up on previous episodes, and brought up some points that feel relevant right now to bring up. So on season 1, episode 2, Synthetic Gerbil says, Gordon going through Cameron's things, and both him not mentioning her gender to Donna, plus the reason why this would bother Donna in the first place, are confusing to me and very open to interpretation. But since these events go by so quickly and don't have greater implications, I guess I never ponder them too much. I think 90% of the things I question or am unsure about, both fact-wise and character motivation-wise in this show as a whole, are in season 1. I've heard some interpretations about Gordon keeping Cameron's gender a secret due to misogyny in the 80s tech world, and potentially internalized by Donna on some level. Or maybe that she might worry Gordon will cheat based on some kind of past impropriety. But since there's no information in this episode about any of these potential forces, I can't say that interpretation necessarily makes sense to me. Thank you so much for bringing this up, Synthetic Journal, and I'm really glad to be able to unpack this a bit more now. So I had some theories for Synthetic Gerbil that I wanted to share here. So all of this is in reference to before Donna knew who Cam was. Donna infers that Cameron is a man, and Gordon lets her run with that interpretation of it until Donna actually sees Cameron in the bathroom the first time she meets her. And as Donna is about to mention to Gordon, I met Cameron, Gordon blurts out, Cameron's a woman. And so he kind of gets in there right at the buzzer with the right thing to do. But it is interesting, not only that, but that in those early episodes, he's rifling through Cameron's bag looking for stuff. So synthetic gerbil is saying, why do all of that? And I do have some theories here. First of all, on the point about Gordon going through Cameron's stuff, I think it's important to remember that Gordon's entire livelihood and family's well-being was resting on getting through this situation with IBM unscathed. All he did was say yes to reverse engineering an IBM PC in his garage with Joe privately, just the two of them. And then Joe starts this whole thing. Joe calls IBM and then the legal teams get involved and they are in trouble. And the only way out is through. And they have to have somebody who's smart enough to know how to create this code without ever having seen any of IBM's work to do it. And that is Cam. Their only way through these legal troubles rests on Cam, who is over a decade younger than Gordon, who has no real responsibilities in the world. She doesn't have a family depending on her. She gets in trouble on the regular. The first time he ever met her, she was being thrown out of the arcade. She was in college, but quit to work for Cardiff. This is the person that he has to hope is going to get the job done and not do more sketchy things on top of the sketchy things that have already happened. So I think when Gordon's looking through her bag, he's looking for proof to get her kicked off the project. I don't think he feels at all comfortable with her. I don't think he wants to work with her. I don't think he ideologically agrees with her in what their priorities are for this PC. And I think it's not so much that he wants to validate that she should be working on the project. I think he wants her gone. And he'd love to find something in that bag that proves that. So that's to the first point. To the second point, and this feels especially relevant coming into this episode. Gordon lets Donna run with the idea that Cameron's a man until he doesn't anymore. And yeah, it could be about misogyny. It could be about that there's, an expectation that most of the people during that time in this industry were going to be men. It could be, however, that there's been an impropriety in the past and he doesn't want to worry Donna. My interpretation of this is that as we see season 1 play out, and now as we get into season 2 and we've seen this dynamic shift between Gordon and Donna, we realize what a thread their relationship was hanging on. There was such a complex web of lies they had told to each other, things they hadn't told each other about. Gordon knew all that time that Donna had told her dad to stop giving them money because she didn't want Gordon to keep hanging himself with the symphonic project. He knew all that and never told her. They both failed. They both pretended they were happy living a life where they weren't pursuing projects like the symphonic. She pretended she was okay to be, taking a back seat in the workplace to being a housewife. She was working, but she was largely carrying all the responsibilities in the household. And she was pretending like that was all fine so that Gordon could go off and do his thing. She was pretending it was okay for her to take a back seat and be helping him on the project for Cardiff, for the Giant, without taking credit for it. There's a lot. There's a very tightly woven web of lying to each other and lying to themselves. And the moment one of them started to make a change, nothing could ever be that way again. The status quo couldn't exist once one of these things starts to get revealed. And so it's just this crazy ripple effect that they're going through. And I think at that point in the story, Gordon, it was just one thing too many for Donna to think that Cameron was a woman. It was just one, can we not, with any sort of pressures around this? And so I think that was what his initial instinct to lie was. But I could see that it may also lend to the interpretation that Gordon has had past improprieties. And when we get to this episode, I feel like that's something that echoes a little bit. And my gut tells me Gordon hasn't done this before. I don't think that Gordon has had a past affair on Donna. I think Donna had her moment with Hunt, But I don't think Gordon has had a moment like this before. I feel like this is the first time. And it's coming out of these extremely like exacerbated circumstances where he's got this health diagnosis that he just received. He's got this secret from her about his health. She's got a secret from him and has been pulling away from him that we've seen. He's probably been feeling that and been feeling really isolated. And so he's handling all of this in a way that I'd prefer he didn't, but I do kind of see what the tensions are with him that he's choosing to resolve in this way right now. So it's interesting how all these echoes come up. And it's because I've seen this episode that I feel like I can go back to synthetic gerbil and say, I don't think that the idea that he had had an impropriety before, and that's why he didn't tell Donna that Cam was a woman. I don't think that works for me when I see this episode play out. So that's my interpretation there. Now, present hour 24, welcome back, is all caught up and is going back through the last episode, season 2, episode 5, and sharing some opinions on this. And I really like some of the comparisons that present hour 24 makes with character actions in the last episode to game playing. So present hour 24 starts with, Tom jumping out of the window from Cameron's place is very much like what a video game character would do in an 80s video game. Press A to jump out from window after meeting with girlfriend. Yeah, right. I really like that. And I also want to bring in this later comment similar to that idea. Gordon hearing the information about his diagnosis is a real turning point for him. He has to really change his lifestyle now for his own good, or else he will keep hitting a brick wall. It's sad for anyone to go through that, but for Gordon, it's as if he's playing a new video game and the graphics are different, and he just got the game instructions from the doctor and it's not sounding very fun. His only option is to press start and there are no cheat codes. He's going to have to figure this out on his own. I love this ongoing metaphor of making them all players in a game. It feels very resonant for season 2. Some more thoughts from present hour 24. I like the context of Cameron as the boss of this company. She's just the best. We don't give refunds to people who are too thick to figure out the game. She drops a hint and then says, bye, LOL. Yeah, the humor in season 2 is less about the punchlines as much as like that they're just so in their characters. Present hour 24 answers the question I asked. I had 2 people answer it. They say, Tom is looking at that hamster's tunnel and trying to figure out how the animal is able to climb through the tunnel. Maybe. Thank goodness there were a couple commenters who knew what that thing was, because I looked at that for so long and I could not make heads or tails of what that funnel system was. So thank you for this. Another great moment from Cam in this episode. Thank you for your honesty. If you don't mind, I'd like a few moments to myself. Ah, she screams. We're going to hear a similar guttural scream in this episode, season 2, episode 6. And so she has these moments. She's just got to unleash. She does it a lot. And Buzz was not wrong when he makes that comment to her in this episode. Another moment of comedy for present hour 24. Cameron sitting in the chair and it just breaks. Too funny. Boz asked, what's shaking? And it turns out it was the chair. You know, again, the comedy, I just find myself laughing at moments in this series where it's not because they were written jokes. It's just like, the cutting between scenes or these moments, these surprising moments just cut you off guard and make you feel something. Another point, later, Boz gives her permission to destroy Joe. That is what she needs to hear to help her become the Terminator in the context of business. I think Cam needs to keep up her Terminator attitude when she is around Joe. I can relate to Cameron as someone who builds something special and then feeling misunderstood by people who are just trying to help. It's such a complex feeling that it's really hard to overcome. Similar to a reaction of people saying, hey, just smile because you'll look better. Joe being the Terminator is something I didn't realize until you mentioned it. That makes more sense because he's a destroyer and Cam is fighting for humanity. I think that this whole weaving in of the Terminator to the last episode is really interesting. I've seen the Terminator, but I'm not really well versed in it. I don't remember it point for point. And I have a feeling that if you do, there's a lot of other symbolism in this episode. So I'd be curious for the people who know that movie really well. Where do you see parallels? What are we missing here? What does that movie being placed within this episode add to it? And then one more question from Present Hour 24. Your description of Joe and Cam during the meeting, your description of Joe and Cam during the meeting in the meeting room was a great insight. Do you think she really impressed Jacob in that meeting? It seemed like it to me, which is great. When I first saw this question from Present Hour 24, I found myself wondering, what is Jacob's deal? You know, like, did she impress Jacob? I think she did, but what does it mean to impress Jacob? Because I'm not sure he has loyalty to anybody on the planet, including his daughter, based on what we've seen with the whole. I kind of know that Joe's up to no good, but all I'm going to do about it is give you a prenup to give to Joe. Like, I'm not going to say you shouldn't have a relationship, but I'm going to use all the ways that I think Joe's a lousy human being for my benefit in my business. Like, I think he's got this assessment of Joe and then doesn't do a thing about that when it doesn't in any way. I don't know what he could say to Sarah, really. But if that's how he treats his daughter, and we've seen how he's being with Joe, and we've seen that Joe is treated perhaps better than Eugene, who he's just like, just fire Eugene and your whole team. That's fine. Do whatever you need to do. So if he is impressed by Cam, great. But like, what good is that for Cam? Probably not good at all. Jacob, what a scoundrel. He is just hardcore. Like in a way that's just like, so it could not register for you, but when it does, it's harsh to notice. Like, he just doesn't care about anybody. Okay, thank you for all that, Present Hour 24. And now, drum roll, everybody, it's time for the comments from Evan the Stray. Okay, let's start with last episode recaps. So recaps to my recaps. Evan says, your question about Tom's focus, the yellow tubes, it's a gerbil / hamster / mouse funhouse. I was actually watching it in the episode that Boz enters mutiny for the first time after prison. You can see the rodent in there at that time, if memory serves me. First of all, thank you everybody who's told me that it was like a tunnel system for a pet, because I just had no idea. Second of all, I'm just wondering if the fact that we've now labeled this as like a gerbil tunnel system, I'm just wondering if that somehow like called out to the universe to get synthetic gerbil to comment on this episode and many others. I feel like we're putting a good energy out into the world. So let's see who else we can attract with other very specific comments. Okay. Joe's lack of poker face with Jacob about Jacob meeting Mutiny's leadership was interesting to me. It's much more revealing than I would have ever expected to see from Joe, or at least my concept of the season 1 Joe. So maybe this was intentional to show Joe getting more in touch with his emotions and displaying character growth. Okay, galaxy brain. Just thinking about this now, Evan, is there any chance that Joe's big reaction was meant to look like Joe didn't have control, but that Joe was trying to get Jacob to want to meet Cameron so that he could pull Cameron in? I know that's a lot. That's too many. That's a lot. But I know that kind of flies in the face of me saying all of this is happening faster than Joe wanted, but maybe that was part of the plan for some timeline. I'm pondering that. Okay. Really good question. Here's one more thing from the last episode that I cannot believe I missed this. Evan says, Boz's date, the date where he couldn't pay at the restaurant, was Cookie from the previous episode. She is Mark Kumpel's, the teenager with 32 online friends, mom. He spoke with her at a residence alongside Mark. I'm unsure whether I would have noticed this had I not been the Goldbergs TV show watcher. The actor, Jennifer Irwin, Cookie, plays a regular role on that series. Also, this scene reminds me so much of Fast Times at Ridgemont High when Stacey Hamilton and Mark Ratner are on a date and Mark has to call Mike Damone on a payphone to bring his wallet to him so he can pay for the meal. You know, you do a deep dive, you talk for hours about an episode, and you still don't notice that Cookie is the same person from the previous episode. Thank you for bringing this up, Evan. I can't believe I didn't clock that it was the same human. Makes a lot of sense. Boy, really bring it all back. Okay, let's talk about season 2, episode 6 comments from Evan. First of all, grape nuts. Possibly the loudest cereal of all time. We cannot hear Joe chewing at all. I'm actually a little disappointed, right? Now that you say that, it brings back the memories of hearing the sound of grape nuts. What a memory. Evan also says there's a contemporary Alpha Systems rack in Sarah's closet, though I'm ignorant to its design and to market date. That's a fun little spot there. I'm not familiar with the Alpha Systems rack, but that sounds like a big deal. Hank calls Gordon Alfred Einstein, uncertain if this is an intentional joke that Hank's in on or if we're supposed to judge him as a little doll. I feel like that, yeah, there is more than one way to interpret it. I think my impression of it is that there's like, they greet each other with inside jokes to begin with. So when Gordon says, I think he says land shark, and then when Henry calls him Alfred Einstein, I think that's like little inside jokes from when they were younger that have helped. Like basically their entire connection is gone right now except for those inside jokes, so everything else is really awkward, but those greetings sound very familiar. Joe reminds me a little of young Sean Connery. He comes walking into the mutiny house like Admiral Eyebrows playing Captain Cool. Nice. I like it. Why did they only use Admiral Eyebrows once in this whole series? We need more. Us fans, we're bringing it into the comments section and we're going to keep it alive. Evan comments about a scene that I loved. Joe meets Tom and they verbally spar over tech cred. Perhaps Joe also gets an inkling of the situation between Tom and Cam and gets jealous. Joe then railroads Cam and Donna on the networking price. Had Tom and Joe's conversations gone more amicably, would the result, i.e. Donna flips out on Joe, then Cam flips out on Donna, and Boz gives Cam a talking to, have changed? It's a good point. I don't think that it would have happened differently if we removed the Tom and Joe scene. I think that Joe was sort of given a green light from Jacob, and then he found a way to use all of it to his advantage. I think that Tom maybe thinks he came away with information about Joe, but it wasn't enough information. I think it was an important and really fun scene, but I don't necessarily think that it would have played out any differently if I do think that Joe clocks that Tom is with Cam. Particularly when Tom drops that one line early on about like, she knows what she wants. And Joe's just like, okay. And doesn't look at him for like 2 more lines. I do think that he has a recognition of that, but I don't think it changes things. Evan says, later at West Group, the camera shot with Donna looks like she's been squeezed between two walls when she's speaking with Joe. Pretty cool. It's such an interesting, the blocking of that scene and the lineup of the shots is so interesting to me. And I'm really glad, Evan, that you raised it. It's so specific. She does look like she's being squeezed between two walls. Joe looks huge because he looks taller than the walls at certain points, and he comes over at one point and he leans on them and he puts his arm up on them, and it makes him look massive and very imposing. So I think there was a lot done in that space to use the space, but it is so bizarre to me that it took me a minute to realize he was not a mistake, that they didn't just like switch locations, that they just switched angles in the same room. What a weird, interesting room that looks so completely different from different angles. Evan says it's interesting that Boz is almost serving as Cam's conscience and voice of reason. Yeah, it's true. She doesn't always listen to him. He got through when it came to Donna. He did not get through when it came to Joe. Also, Mutiny, at Tom's recommendation, collectively tries to trick Joe, but he's quick to catch them after noticing an irregularity in chess play. Again, that cool shot from inside a machine looking out perspective. I love those shots. It really sort of puts you in the viewpoint. I'm trying to remember if it was Daisy von Schurler-Mayer's interview or Juan Jose Campanella's interview, where they talked about like trying to put you inside the perspective of machines and giving you different ways to like make a human connection between the screen and the person behind it. And I like that they've used this a couple times where we see the reflection of our character looking at the screen. And by the way, another thing that I noticed about that is that what was on the screen, the one side was like more thickly green than the other one. So it looks like Joe's face is almost split down the middle. And it reminds me of Two-Face, like that character, the comic character. And he's kind of being that way in this episode and really the whole show as well. So that's another thing there. Evan also says Gordon's illness diagnosis and possibly even illness progression really causes him to seemingly act out of my supposition of his personal character. He cheats on Donna. For me, it's kind of nuts. Like, WTF, Gordon? Donna's awesome. Yeah, I don't know. He's out of control right now. He doesn't know what to do with this diagnosis. He's been isolated both through his own doing and from the fact that Donna's been pulling away. He's just trying to create a connection with somebody he can trust. And there's not a lot of those people out there right now. We learned that Donna lied to her mom about losing the baby as she has Cam take her to get an abortion. This comes as such a surprise to me. She must really be in serious emotional and relationship pain. Yeah, I do wonder why Donna, why she makes this choice, but also why she feels like she needs to be alone in it. I think, is it because she's so consumed with what's happening at work that she can't even imagine being pulled away from it? Or is there also something else at play here for her? Is it something about her relationship with Gordon? Because she doesn't know that he's sick. So I do wonder what's driving her in that decision. Gordon cries while Donna sings Haley, Baby Mine. I would like to think this is the pain of guilt, but he might be reflecting on his own mortality. Though it could be the song and the memory of watching Dumbo and hearing it sung. It's quite moving. You know, as I rewatched the scene from Dumbo, there's like, it is sort of voyeuristic because you've got that scene between Dumbo and Dumbo's mom, but then you've got scenes with the other animals, the babies and their moms, and you're just kind of looking around. And then there was a bird, God, I don't remember the bird, I'm sorry, who's crying, watching all of this. And so it's sort of like looking on and crying at it. So there is something appropriate. There's a lot of heaviness around what Gordon just did and his illness, and all of that could be making him cry and reflect. But it also feels very appropriate. He's almost like the bird in that scene in Dumbo where he's hearing, like, you know, Donna's singing the song Baby Mine to Haley and Gordon's tearing up. One more comment. Joe wants to acquire mutiny. Now, this feels pretty aggressive and violating. I'm expecting Cameron to be hotter than a $2 pistol, channeling my inner Boz, when she learns of this. And if she's not, I am. I'm so angry. Leave her alone. Gosh, can you imagine? Like you try as hard as you can to set up a boundary, to remove somebody, to extract them from your life, and then to have them reinsert themselves in such, like, in a way that takes control over your entire livelihood. Wow. Wow. I can't even imagine that level of violation. And I just come away feeling like Joe has not yet changed. I do feel by the end of the series, Joe will have changed. And I'm trying to pinpoint when, and it's not here. You can question it at times with the relationship with Sarah so far. But goodness, this is a lot. Okay, some quotes. Second runner-up. Comes a time when vision meets engineering. You hire people. That's Joe. That's Joe talking to Tom. First runner-up. Wait, what is this? Is that why you brought me out here? So you could unburden yourself? Yeah, Jules asked the right question there. He unloaded a lot on her. And the winner, Boz. So, and this is a cousin to the one that I picked. Boz says, maybe you didn't like it because it was like looking in a damn mirror. Yeah, it's the truth. It's so the truth. And that, everybody, is season 2, episode 6, 10 Broad 36. It all started with me trying to explain 10 Broad 36, and it ended in all this. So, my gosh, what a fun ride this has been. A lot of symbolism and connections in this episode. And I can't wait to get into the next one with you. And in the meantime, everybody go out there and watch Halt and Catch Fire. Bye.